Edward was drenched in cold sweat. Meanwhile, Cindy said, "Sure, as if we have anything to be scared of. Edward, just give your dad a call if anything happens, and everything will be sorted out." Edward did not know what to say, but the situation at hand had to be solved somehow. He turned to look at Steve. "Mr. Zoner, I'm sure it's all right if I just go by myself, right?" Edward was trying to imply that he was hoping to go alone and offer some money as compensation. The Torrent clan would at least spare him some mercy for his father's sake, and the whole thing would be over without him having to embarrass himself. However, Steve was far from willing to let that slide. "Did you not hear what I just said?" Just then, Frank stood up as well. "What are you trying to do? Do you know who Mr. Channing is? Talking to him like that?" It was clear that Frank had no idea how much power the Torrent clan actually held. Steve turned to look at Frank and smirked. "I know very well who he is, but you don't seem to know what the Torrent clan is capable of. Get him." 7 or 8 burly men came into the room at Steve's order. They stood in a line in the room, glowering at everyone. These hunks were all wearing suits, their expressions murderous and terrifying. The girls in the room cried out, stumbling backward. The guys' expressions flashed warily as well. Nancy widened her eyes, and Wilbur tapped her shoulder lightly with a smile. "It's fine. Don't worry." Nancy nodded, but her expression was still one of worry. Cindy was at a loss for words as well. She did not expect the manager of a restaurant to threaten someone like Edward like this. A moment later she turned to Edward angrily. "What the hell are you good for? Letting some low-class manager trample all over you like this?" Edward did not know what to say in the face of Cindy's attitude, but he could not afford to embarrass himself. All he could do was force himself to get to his feet. "Mr. Zoner, I'll talk to Mr. Torrent. Don't worry. I'll take care of this." "You'll take care of it? Can you even afford to?" Edward said, "Mr. Zoner, my father's at least the district manager here. Don't make this difficult for me." "I'm not trying to make things difficult for you, but you've messed with someone you shouldn't have. Anyone who took part in beating up that man earlier, stand up right now!" Steve yelled. Everyone's expressions turned gloomy. Steve's words implied that there was no way for this matter to settle peacefully. After all, he did not even care about going easy on Edward. Everyone's chest lurched in fear at the sight of the burly man, unsure of what to do. Cindy finally sensed that something was off, and she could only stare at Edward, hoping that he would admit to it. Wilbur shook his head at the sight of his terrified classmates. He did not want to play a part in this, but he could not take Steve threatening his classmates like this. He looked over at Steve. "Are you done with that attitude?" Steve was caught off guard and looked at Wilbur. "Who the fuck are you?" Wilbur said coolly, "I'm your worst nightmare. Get out of here right now and tell that idiot Mr. Torrent to apologize to us, and I'll drop it." Steve could not help but burst out laughing. "Wow, you really do have a death wish. It seems you won't back down without being taught a lesson." Wilbur smiled. "Coming from someone like you? That's pretty funny." Steve's expression darkened at once, but Edward said, "What are you doing? Do you even know who Mr. Torrent is? Do you have a death wish?"